Hey everyone, today we're diving into the PvP mode of Jujutsu Infinite and talking all about the best innate techniques to use in battle. Now, if you've been enjoying the game's PvE content, you might have a solid build ready to go, but when it comes to PvP, it's a whole different ballgame. The key to success here is adapting to your opponent's unique skills and abilities. Unlike PvE, where you can pretty much cruise through with certain techniques, PvP forces you to think on your feet, and that means the techniques that work best for solo missions might not cut it in a head-to-head battle. So, what's the deal with the innate techniques in PvP? Well, it's all about being flexible and reacting to what your enemy throws at you. Some of the go-to choices for PvE just don't have the same impact in these high-stakes player battles. You'll need to look for abilities that not only dish out damage, but can also counter or outplay your opponent's moves. It's like a chess match, but with cursed energy flying everywhere. Stay tuned as we break down the best options for taking your opponent by surprise and securing those PvP victories. Let's get into it. I'm quickly moving on to the video, and I'm Innate Techniques for PvP in Jujutsu Infinite. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of tier list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching.
A very small portion of the audience is subscribed to the channel. Please don't forget to subscribe if you like these types of videos. Thanks.
The innate techniques for PvP in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Boogie Woogie, Blazing Courage, Construction, Tool Manipulation, and Cloning. Alright, let's talk about the C tier innates in Jujutsu Infinite, where the battle for supremacy is fierce, and some techniques are just, well, not cutting it. If you're looking to optimize your loadout for PvP, the C tier is definitely not where you want to stay too long. These innates are pretty much the definition of not worth your time, or at least not unless you're feeling adventurous or really want to test the limits of your patience. First up, we've got Boogie Woogie. It might sound cool with its mobility, but let's be real, the damage is just too weak to rely on for anything serious in PvE. Sure, the mobility can be fun to mess around with, but in PvP, not so much. You can use it for a quick getaway, but don't expect it to dish out any meaningful damage. The moment you try to actually fight, you'll quickly realize it's more of a gimmick than an asset. Then there's Blazing Courage. On paper, the buffs seem solid, but honestly, you can find better buffs from rarer innates. It feels like the kind of thing you use when you're trying to make a build work, but there are just so many other ways to power up that it feels almost like a waste. The buffs don't stand out enough to put this in your core PvP strategy. Moving on, Construction might just be the worst of the bunch. Weak damage overall, no standout abilities, and it just doesn't bring anything to the table that can compete in PvP. It's the kind of innate that you immediately consider re-rolling when you get it, hoping for something more worthwhile. If you're running this, you're really setting yourself up for disappointment. And last but certainly least is Cloning. The clones die so quickly that they might as well be holograms. Sure, you might get a little distraction out of it, but when it comes to real combat, this innate doesn't offer any lasting value. You're better off choosing something that can at least stand its ground or deal a bit of damage. Cloning just can't cut it. So yeah, these C tier innates, consider them a quick reroll priority. They're not going to help you in the heat of battle, and they definitely won't give you the edge you need in PvP. Stick to the higher tiers, and you'll save yourself a lot of frustration. The innate techniques for PvP in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Judgment, Ratio Technique, Straw Doll, Cursed Speech, Blood Manipulation, and Cryokinesis. Alright, let's talk about some of the more meh innate techniques for PvP in Jujutsu Infinite. These aren't the ones you'll be writing home about, but they've got their place, kinda like the side characters in your favorite anime that are cool but don't do much. You know, the ones who always tag along but never get the main spotlight. If you've been playing the game for a while, you probably know what I'm talking about. First up, we've got Judgment. Now don't get me wrong, his Executioner's Sword packs a punch for single target damage, but that's pretty much where the fun stops. You'll definitely want to pair this with something more exciting if you want to get serious. It's like that friend who's great at one thing, but that's it. You wouldn't call them a powerhouse. In PvP, you're better off re-rolling for something more versatile and impactful. Then there's Ratio Technique, which isn't bad, but let's be honest, it's just okay. It offers decent AoE damage, and yeah, it's better than some of the lower tier innates, but that's about it. If you're looking for something that blows the competition away, you'll be left wanting. It's like going to an all-you-can-eat buffet and only having room for the salad. Not bad, but you're just not getting the main course. Moving on to Straw Doll, and well, let's just say this one doesn't really bring the heat. The Nail Barrage Resonance combo is fine, but nothing to write home about. It's like the B-rated movie of Innate. You can sit through it, but you won't be jumping out of your seat. There's nothing particularly wrong with it, but it definitely won't be your go-to when you're in a pinch. And then we've got Curse Speech, which feels like it was designed more for quantity than quality. Tons of AoE, but the damage? Well, let's just say you'll be standing around wondering if you actually hit anyone. It's like trying to fire a machine gun with confetti. Sure, you're spreading it everywhere, but no one's taking you seriously. Definitely not a top pick for PvP unless you're just having fun with it. Last but not least, there's Blood Manipulation. This one actually has some potential in PvP, especially if you're looking to mess with your opponents a bit, but it falls short when it comes to pure damage. If you're into playing the long game and slowly draining your opponent's will to fight, this could work, but in most cases, you'll wish for a little more oomph in your attacks. So yeah, if you're rocking any of these innates, you're definitely not in bad shape, but don't expect to make any jaws drop. They'll support your main moves, but you're not going to win any championships with these alone. Time to get rolling for some better options. The innate techniques for PvP in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Volcano, Hydrokinesis, Gambler Fever, Soul Manipulation, and Demon Vessel. Alright folks, let's dive right into the meat and potatoes of PvP in Jujutsu Infinite, the A tier innate techniques. Now, these aren't your top tier game-breaking abilities, but they're definitely powerful. They have their quirks and weaknesses, but with the right strategy, they can really turn the tide in a match. Let's break down some of the best choices here. First up, we've got Volcano, and let me tell you, this one is a beast in PvE. Big AoE, huge damage, and it's just a whole lot of fun to play with. Seriously, if you're looking to rack up damage and enjoy some fiery chaos, this is your go-to. But in PvP, it's a little bit of a different story. You'll be dealing with faster opponents, and timing is key. Still, if you combine Volcano with a teammate who can control the battlefield, this ability can be a game changer. Then there's Hydrokinesis. Now, this one is a little on the consistent side of things. Solid AoE, decent damage, and it won't leave you hanging. It's not the flashiest of the bunch, but it gets the job done. You're not going to be pulling off crazy combos, but you'll be steady and reliable. In a well-rounded team, this could be your dependable option while you wait for your teammates to set up the big plays. Now, let's talk about Gambler Fever. Long-range damage? Check. Plenty of firepower? Double check. If you like to take a step back and shoot your way to victory, Gambler Fever is right up your alley. It's powerful, precise, and perfect for those of you who like to keep your distance. The downside, you have to be a little more strategic with your positioning since you're not going to be tanking any hits while you blast from afar. Moving on to Soul Manipulation, this one's a bit trickier, but it can pay off big time. It's all about stacking orbs and hitting those abilities right on target for some serious DPS. The learning curve is steep, but if you can master it, you'll find yourself absolutely shredding enemies in no time. It's all about timing and positioning with this one, but once you nail it, the results speak for themselves. Lastly, we've got Demon Vessel. This ability is seriously one of the best out there, both for buffs and damage. When you activate that switch move, you get a sweet 25% buff to all your stats, which can make a huge difference in tight PvP situations. It's not the flashiest move on the surface, but it brings some serious power to the table. Combine it with a team that can take full advantage of those buffs, and you'll be unstoppable. So there you have it, A-tier innates that can definitely hold their own in Jujutsu Infinite PvP. They may not be S-tier gods, but they've got plenty of punch if you use them right. The innate techniques for PvP in this tier are, in order from top left to bottom right, Infinity, Star Rage, and Curse Queen. Let's talk about some of the absolute powerhouses in Jujutsu Infinite when it comes to PvP innate techniques. I'm talking about the kind of skills that make you feel like you're the main character of a shonen anime. You know, the ones where you just step into the battlefield and immediately dominate. And yes, I'm looking at you, Infinity, and Star Rage. These two can absolutely turn the tide of a match if used correctly. Now, let's start with Infinity. It's so close to being an S tier, but it's got a little bit of a tricky side. The timing for some of its moves can be a bit finicky, and while the maximum ability isn't exactly the best in class, it still packs a punch. If you've got the timing down, you can dish out some crazy damage, but it's definitely not as forgiving as others. Still, don't sleep on it. It will serve you well in the right hands. On the other hand, Star Rage is a bit more straightforward, but it's got its own quirks. It's solid for PvE, no doubt, but PvP? It's not perfect. The damage is decent, but its moves tend to knock enemies back, which can be a problem if you're trying to clear out a group of foes quickly. The knockbacks can mess with your AoE abilities, so while it's powerful, it's a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to crowd control. Still, if you can manage the spacing, you'll see the damage stack up pretty fast. And then we have Curse Queen. Oh, this one's a treat, especially if you're looking for an insane PvE ability. Jacob's Ladder is just a beast, causing huge amounts of damage, and the maximum ability makes it even more terrifying. It's one of the best moves in the game for dealing with multiple enemies at once. So, while it might not always shine in PvP, for PvE, it's one of the best. If you're grinding through waves of enemies, this technique will make you feel like a total powerhouse. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.